Here you can see us walking outside, and as we mentioned before, Jerry Ross was about to become the first human to leave the planet 7 times. Rex liked the kid that between him and Jerry before the flight, they had 6 flights worth of experience. Here you see a couple of strap-in pictures of both the flight deck and the mid-deck as we get ready for our flight into space.
Here we are just before launch, about 6 seconds before launch. We fire up the main engines. These are all Block 2s. It was the first flight of brand new engines for the orbiter. Once they're all set to go, we light the solid rocket boosters, and once that happens, you know you're going flying. We'll show you a picture just in a second here of what it looks like inside the cockpit. You can see us shaking when the main engines are starting up for about 6 seconds, and then there's no doubt when the solids light there. Just a few seconds later, once we leave the pad, we do a right roll that heads us in the correct course to go into space. And then once that's complete, all we do is just go up very quickly. And when you glance out, I glanced out my window once here, and you could just see the Earth dropping away. It's an amazing sight. Right about here, we're getting pretty close to throttling the main engines back for our maximum dynamic pressure, which is close to when we're going supersonic. You can see the main engines roaring away there with the solids going. And in this next view, what you'll see is some shock waves actually moving back and forth over the shuttle there as we're going supersonic. Then the main engines throttle up, and they stay fully throttled up for the rest of launch. About 2 minutes in, the solids are used all their fuel, and they drop off and actually parachute in and are recovered. And now we're just on our main engines, and it's actually a tremendously smooth ride here for about another 6 minutes all the way to orbit. Our engines shut down right on time, and we were in orbit.
One of the first things we do when we get to orbit is open the payload bay doors, and that obviously allows us access to our docking port and the main payload, the S0, and it also allows us to cool our equipment. On flight day 3, we had to start our final rendezvous with the space stations. We did an OMS burn, or orbiting maneuvering system, to raise our altitude to about 250 miles. And you can see, you can really feel it, and it moves some stuff around. And this is what it looks like on the flight deck. On the mid deck, you hear a OMS burn, and then you can see what happens when that happens. And you can see you have to grab things.
On flight day 3, we got ready to do the rendezvous, and it truly is a team effort. The rendezvous is broken down basically into 3 phases. The first phase is done by burns that are targeted by the ground, and that was one of the OMS burn. And then the rest of the burns are done basically based on onboard sensors. Up in the right-hand corner there, you saw Rex working the handheld laser to give us range and range rate as we approach the International Space Station. This is a picture of the shuttle from the ISS as we were leaving from underneath the station and moving out in front of it. We actually do an approach from below, fly all the way out in front of the station, and then we back in. And this is what it looked like as we approached from in front, and you can see this right here is a docking module on the International Space Station, and that's the target that we're trying to dock to. This is what it looked like from the flight deck as we're getting ready to dock. You can see the International Space Station coming down, and we're about 3 feet away, and this is what it looked like from one of our cameras. The orbiter's down here, and this is as we're getting ready to dock to the station. When we get within about 3 inches, we actually fire quite a few jets on the orbiter to make sure that we have good contact. And I was very relieved that the docking had gone well. That meant that we could carry on with the rest of the mission.
And at this point, later that same day, we were able to open the hatches, and there you see both of the commanders, Yuri Franco of the expedition crew and Mike Bloomfield of our crew. And we were the first faces these guys had seen in 4 months, so we got quite a welcome when we all entered into the U.S. laboratory. We got right to work. One of our jobs was transferring equipment. You can see I'm not only holding a bag, but I have another bag between my knees, which makes transferring in space a little bit more efficient than here on Earth. This view kind of gives you an idea, if you watch the lighting, of just how quickly a sunrise happens on orbit. And now a view in full daylight. You can see the station arm pulling the S0 truss up out of the shuttle payload bay. And here we are at the robotic workstation as we're doing that maneuver. You can see the 5 monitors there that are showing us 5 different camera views. And we used a number of different cameras to monitor the progress of S0 as we moved it around. This one is from the shuttle's robot arm elbow camera. And we also used the shuttle payload bay cameras And this is one of the views that you're seeing here of S0 as we're moving it around and toward the install position. This view actually shows both robot arms, and you can see that the shuttle arm is in motion in this picture. Sometimes the camera view can be a little bit distracting. You're trying to monitor the arm in S0, but there's a beautiful view of the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aqaba and the Suez Canal and the Nile Delta behind it. And here we are moving S0 into the position where we're going to start the final install onto the zenith side of the laboratory. Over here on the right is the claw. The claw goes around the capture bar and provide the mechanical attachment. And this is the camera view we were using for the final alignment. We're trying to get these alignment bars right down the center of these V-guides right here. Dan Bursch was actually at the controls for that final install and did a great job. You can also see here at the robotics workstation a number of laptops, including one that shows us a bird's eye view of the station provided by the DUG program.
As you've heard, we did 4 spacewalks during the flight, and we'd like to take you through what a typical spacewalk would be like. This is the space station's airlock. I'm opening the hatch on the first spacewalk, and if the children will watch, I'll wave to you right here. We wear some pretty neat hardware out there. It's a 300-pound spacesuit. It's kind of its own little spaceship. And as you heard before, we actually have cameras on our heads as we do the spacewalks. It gives the folks inside an opportunity to follow us and the folks on the ground. Sometimes what we do during a spacewalk is manually move something like that. And again, Carl, Dan, Steve, and Ellen were inside using 2 robotic arms to work with us. And we're basically over their heads just outside the space station wall right there. Sometimes we actually carry large objects. This is an example of Rex holding a 400-pound object that on the ground would be very difficult to move. But in space, you can see he can even take one hand off. And to your left, you have a nice view of the shuttle here. So he's moving this 400-pound object very easily and going to place it down on the United States lab. This is a view from inside the space shuttle, Jerry and Mike helping conduct the spacewalk. And basically at this point, Rex is right over their head outside that window. Sometimes when we attach things to the space station, we actually got to work together. A lot of times we were apart. This is a view from Rex's helmet camera towards me right there in the back, helping him attach something to the space station. Suits are very comfortable to work in, and we really enjoyed it. Sometimes we do tasks like simply connecting electrical connectors. So here I am making an electrical connection. The gloves are much like working in ski mittens, though, so it makes it a little bit harder than doing it as if you were using your bare hands. We also make mechanical connections sometimes. So this is one of the struts you've heard us talk about. It will be attached to S0, and it not only requires some pushing, but also some special tools sometimes.
And you'll see in the next view here a couple of those special tools. This is a power tool, much like you'd have in your home shop, except specially manufactured for use in zero gravity in a vacuum of space. And this is Lee attaching it to a torque multiplier that gives us 5 times multiplication factor to put the proper amount of load onto that bolt to properly attach it to the station. It's another great view of Lee as he was moving those keel fittings around to their stow location. Another one of his dismal times where he's out there having to watch the beautiful world go by. We also took parts of the outside of the laboratory off, and this is one of those MMOD shields that's being reinstalled by Steve and Rex after they'd rewired the connections for the station arm so that it will be able to operate off of the mobile transporter. As we told you, Steve Frick was the operator of the shuttle arm during the flight, and in particular on EVA-3, we used that arm to position Steve down there to do that rewiring of the panel you just saw. This is a helmet camera view from me on the last EVA, number 4. Great view of the underside of the station, particular down towards the Russian components. Great view of the blackness of space and the curvature of the Earth there. And that light that you see in my left hand is something I'm getting ready to install onto the station. Now this view is showing you a wide view of me looking around and enjoying this ride on the end of the arm. And this is the view I was seeing out of my helmet-mounted camera. You can see the orbiter down here. You can see this beam over here that I'm going to take it off of the S0 and attach it back on the US node. Incredible views as Ellen and Dan and Carl were moving us around. This is the hardest part of an EVA, going back in at the end. Incredible experiences out there, and the time goes by very quickly, and it really is truly hard for a crew member to come back inside and have to no longer enjoy the views and the experience of being outside. So Steve in the foreground and Rex over here with a camera, me in a suit on the one wall, and Lee coming in from the completion of our last spacewalk. And there's a high five between myself and Lee. Very satisfied feeling that everything went so well.
And this is a picture of the mobile transporter, the first railroad in space having its shakedown cruise. And this will provide the basis for the robot arm to actually extend and build the rest of the space station in future missions. But here it's getting its initial cruise. And we also have a lot of pictures coming up of various activities inside of the space station. Here we're having a barbecue banquet that we had with the space station crew members here in the shuttle, and you can see the Western motif with our bandanas. And the favorite item that we had was the s'mores that Mike made with candy bars and marshmallows and tortillas. Those were great. Here you have a picture of me doing a shampoo with a rinse-free soap and water from the galley. And no hair dryers there. You dry your head with a towel. And here Mike is using the exercise machine, the exercise bicycle. We also use this in preparation for our EVAs and to try to get some exercise. And here I am being the chef for the day, and I'm pulling the various food items out of the galley and distributing to the rest of the crew. And there you can see Mike working on some more tortillas. And finally, this is doing some housework. This is using a vacuum cleaner, and you'll see it looks kind of similar to what you'd have at home. And you use that to clean out the filters inside the equipment that traps there's no gravity to help clean the air. And here Steve is changing a LiO cartridge. These cartridges remove the carbon dioxide from the air. They have to be changed several times a day so that the air remains breathable. So he's letting us stay alive there on the shuttle. And we will take a few minutes to enjoy being in space. Here Jerry's enjoying microgravity. And these were, you'll see a somersault coming up. There you go, Rex doing a somersault. And these were very nice to show to our families when we had our private video conference with our families. And here's Steve Smith using a big ball of water. And you can see water's the size of a tennis ball. Has a big bubble inside it. You can see the amazing effects of surface tension. And there you can see a M&M got snagged by that big bubble. And finally, at the end of each day, we'd go to sleep, and you'd see us in the sleeping bag, covering our eyes and getting some rest.
Well, this is one of the sadder times of the mission also when we had to leave the space station. We'd done everything we'd come to do, and we were getting ready to undock and fly around. The last thing we do, obviously, is close the hatch. So we got the hatch closed, and then we sent everybody really to the flight deck, and we got ready to do the undock. On the flight deck, we had Mike and Ellen in the front handling all of the systems. I was in the back at the controls, and everyone else basically had a camera. And we all stayed real busy during the whole fly around. We had a lot of steps to go through before we managed to undock, and we were just getting ready here. We were pretty close within just a couple minutes of separating from the station. That panel there, I have the controls the jets of the shuttle. This is the view of the centerline camera that we use to maintain our alignment, and you can see right at the moment of separation we're starting to move away. And then here we have the view from inside the orbiter. This is really amazing because that part of the station that's moving away is only about 3 feet or so from our face looking out the window, so it really is an amazing sight to watch it slip away so close to you. We moved out in darkness and then got up to 450 feet and watched the sun come up. This is real-time view of the sun coming up on the station. We're looking from the orbiter and the sun's behind us, and as soon as the sun came up, we started to fly around. Once the sun does come up to where you can see it, though, it's blindingly bright in space, so we're all wearing sunglasses, but even with that, it was kind of hard to look that way. This was a nice view the station got for us of the space shuttle with an empty payload bay now that S0 was up on the space station. This is coming around the back side of the station. You can see S0 on the far side, and this is similar to the slide that we showed before the presentation. Flight deck got kind of crowded there, but everybody's working. You can see Rex there with the handheld laser. Steve is on the right and Jerry's on the left. Both have different cameras, and Mike just had to come up from the front to take a look since he has no windows up there that he can see the station with. And I was somewhere on the floor in that view. This was our last real view of the space station, right not long before the sun went down. You can see the S0 there and the beautiful golden arrays just before the sun went down, and then we separated.
And eventually it was time to pack up and go home, so one of the first things we had to do was close the payload bay doors. And before we did that, we had cold soaked the orbiter the night before so that it stays at a cool, comfortable temperature when it's time to come home. And you'll see us in this next photo. We're kind of dressed appropriately because it is a little bit chilly there. We had some extra clothes on. And like any trip, you got to pack before you come home. And here's Lee and Ellen packing a printer, and Jerry getting some stuff ready to go, closing some panels. And one of the next things we had to do was get on our launch and entry suits. So we had to unstow those and help people get their suits on, which is a little more difficult in zero-G than it was down here on Earth. And this is Mike getting his suit on first, and Jerry and Steve are helping him out and trying to hold him down while he gets it on. And it works pretty good. And then we got Steve in his suit, and me and Steve there are helping him get his harness on. His harness attaches to his parachute. And then once you get all the harness and suit on, then you can strap them into their seats upstairs, and then we get our seats on.
This is a view out the overhead window as we were re-entering the atmosphere, and you can see the red light, the plasma is coming off the tail of the orbiter as we recontact the atmosphere. The entry in many ways is even more dramatic than the launch into space. You got to take all that energy that you put into the orbiter and you got to take it all out, and it comes out in the form of heat. And we made a big right sweeping turn as we flew over KSC, and you'll see the coastline coming into view here in a minute. This is what it looked like out Steve's window as we aligned the orbiter up with the runway. It was a pretty neat feeling to roll out where the computers told you to do, and you look down there, and lo and behold, the runway's there right where it's supposed to be. We are coming down. You can see at an angle of about 20 degrees, and we'll hold that angle of 20 degrees descent angle until we get to about 2,000 feet. And then at 2,000 feet, we begin to pull the nose of the orbiter up to the horizon. And then as we pass through 300 feet, Steve pushes a couple of buttons on the forward part of the orbiter, and we get the gear coming down. It's always amazing to me, and I think it's a tribute to the technology, that we can start this whole process for landing half a world away. Literally, we start the burn someplace over Australia, and then as it turned out, for this landing, we were able to touch down within about 100 feet of the desired touchdown point. I think it's a real tribute to all the hard work that went into the mission. And then finally, we get the drag chute out, and that slows us down and lessens the load on the nose gear as we roll out at Kennedy Space Center. And we were quite happy to be home after 11 days in space and traveling about 4.5 million miles.